C5 Insight is a Microsoft partner that plans, builds, and supports solutions in Dynamics 365, Teams, SharePoint, and the Power Platform. Contact us to modernize your business today.
Thank you, everyone, for joining C5 Insight and Microsoft for today's webinar on creating Copilot agents. A couple of quick housekeeping items before we jump in. We will be hosting a Q&A at the end of today's webinar where we'll answer all of your questions about AI and Copilot agents. You can submit submit questions throughout by clicking the Q&A icon at the top of your Teams window. We'll ask our presenters at the end all of your questions, and then we'll be posting some helpful links in the Q&A area for your reference. We are recording today's webinar, so be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, C5 Insight, to get notified when that's published. So let's jump in. Today's webinar is a visionary webinar where we will dive deeper into creating AI agents with Copilot Studio and Azure AI Foundry. No programming skills required. Our speaker today is myself, Traci Winter. I'm the Senior Director of Business Consulting here at C5. I'm going to kick us off as well as lead the panel discussion at the end. We will also have Geoff Abels, C5's very own CEO and Copilot MVP. He's going to demonstrate how to build lead processing agent in Copilot Studio. You'll catch the vision and of the power of agentic AI that anyone on your team can empower to create with a clear use case on how agents can begin saving time for your sales team immediately. Kody, Wildfeuer with Microsoft, is going to explore the future of AI agents. He's going to present a visionary outlook on the possibilities of agents that create agents, linking multiple agents together and how pro coders can identify connectors and APIs to enable low-code makers. So before we jump in, one of the most popular questions we get is, what are the different agents, copilots, and their purposes? So I'm going to review that real quick so that we can get a good understanding before going in a little deep dive. So there are numerous copilots. What we found is the easiest way to categorize them is by purpose, not capabilities. Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat is the free AI companion available to everyone in your organization. It grounds itself on all of the data available on the internet, plus any documents that you upload. Next, we move into productivity-specific Copilot. This is Microsoft 365 Copilot. This is the core of your Copilots enhancing workday productivity for everyone across the full Microsoft 365 modern workplace. Think Teams, Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, all of your apps. Next, we have role-specific copilots. This is your Copilot for sales, service. These are your role-based copilots that extend Microsoft 365 Copilot capabilities into the business applications. Like I said, deep Dynamics 365 for sales, finance, and customer service. Then finally, we have organization-specific copilots. This is Copilot Studio and AI agents. With Copilot Studio, your organization can fully customize Microsoft's AI solutions. You can create custom copilots and agents that integrate with your proprietary systems and knowledge source. You can also access pre-built agents and copilots. So now that we've reviewed the different copilots, tell me where your organization is with AI and Copilot. Our wonderful marketing director, Haley, is going to share the link in the chat, or there's a QR code right here. You can scan it, scan that QR code and answer just a couple of questions. We'll give you a minute to do that. As you can see, while you're doing that, we do have this, and we have utilized this survey in the past, so you can kind of see some of the high-level results we've seen. You can see here, kind of overall responses that we've seen is, using some non-AI Copilot solutions. That Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, great, love it. We're using a lot of that. A lot of people are using that Microsoft 365 Copilot in your apps. So like I said, those are your Word, Office, Excel, Teams area. Looks like we're increasing our percentage here in the business app. So Copilot for sales, service, and finance, as well as increasing that custom agent. So that's fantastic that we're seeing a lot of increase in some of these areas. On top of this, the next question that we kind of had was describing the use case. So you can see the high level word cloud here. We're seeing some agent, obviously, everybody's putting that agent word in there, but email, support, and it's changing. So it looks like we're getting a lot of bots, processing sales. So after the call, we will share the results that you see on the previous screen, as well as a list of the agent use cases here. So outside of just this individual word cloud, we'll give you the full list of use case agents that we're receiving. So we'll back to this real quick. Looks like we've got some great numbers coming in. So it's great to see. Like I said, it's great to see all of this information and getting it. We'll give the results to you afterwards. So diving in, I want to talk really briefly about what is an agent. How is it different from what we learned to do with generative AI and normal copilots in the last 2 years? It is an agency. It doesn't just respond to prompts by summarizing knowledge or creating content. It can actually make decisions for you and execute actions for you, as long as you allow it to. It is the you that gives it agency in selected areas. But differently, it's powered by luck. So what does that mean? Luck is an acronym that describes how well-run organizations are more people-centric. That is listening and remembering better, understanding and analyzing to make better decisions, connecting through consistent and meaningful processes, and knowing the results so there can be continuous improvement. Luck is how well-adjusted humans interact with each other. It's also how well-run organizations use digital solutions to empower their humans to do this better. But it is now how AI agents can help us be better humans and build better businesses. And that is what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to leave it off and pass it over to Geoff to go into our lead processing agent. Geoff, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Traci. Let me share. Okay. Everyone can see my screen, I take it. So thank you so much. So I'm going to lead in with how you can create your own agent in Copilot Studio, and we're going to use a lead processing agent as an example of that. So let's dive in. Let me kind of give you a quick explanation of the agent first. So the scenario here is this. If you have ever worked in sales or with a sales team, you know a tremendous amount of time is consumed doing administrative tasks around just handling leads as they come in. Spam leads come in from the internet, that kind of thing that you really don't want to spend much time on. Sometimes you just get an email address and you want to get the website out of that, and so then you have to rekey that in. There's a long list of other things that might happen as well, but we started simple and started just with that. So let's take a look at a lead processing agent, end in mind, and what it's doing. Now, before I show you this demo, I'll let you know what you're going to see is a lead processing agent running inside of Copilot Studio. It can also run directly inside of Microsoft Teams, but because today is about the maker experience, we're going to show you the view of the maker as they build it. And then we'll walk through, well, how did they make that? A new lead has come into Dynamics 365 and triggered my Copilot Studio agent. The agent has reviewed it and believes it has detected spam, so it sends me a Teams approval message. I take a look, and agreeing that yes, this does look like spam, I approve disqualifying it. Back in Dynamics 365 Sales, I can refresh my screen and see that my agent has indeed disqualified the lead. Later that day, another lead comes in. This time it isn't categorized as spam, so I don't get any Teams approval notification. But because it's not spam, my agent is trying to do a little more of the work for me. It looks at the email address and suggests filling in the website for me. I can make changes to the website's URL, and I can click Submit and have that website written directly into the Dataverse. So hitting the highlights of that again, just to understand, because when you look at the maker experience, it can look like a lot. As a user, a new lead comes in. Now, the typical flow in most organizations is I get an email. That email says, hey, there's a new lead in CRM. I get a link to it. I need to click that link to open the lead and look at it. When I look at it, I have to triage it and go, wait a minute, this is someone selling cleaning services or wanting an internship or something like that. Okay, now I need to go and manually disqualify it. Or maybe it's not spam, but I see that I've got an email address and I want to create the website URL, and I need to go look at that email and manually key that in. All of that was just turned into instead just a ding alert. This looks like spam. Do you want to approve it? Yep, that's all I do. I get an alert. Yes, it's spam. I don't do anything else. Now, AI could just as easily say, if that's working really, really well and consistently, get rid of the alert completely. Just take care of that for me automatically. The other thing it did was it said, hey, I think this is the URL, but can you confirm? And by the way, it's got the logic built in there to go, if that's a free email address like a Gmail account or a Outlook.com account or something like that, don't do it, right? Don't go get the website URL out of that for me. Just put it in there if their domain on their email address looks like a real email account. Great, can put that in there for me too. Again, it let me edit it. It doesn't even have to do that for me. So I can take all those manual steps and turn them into a few clicks, or if I've tested this and it's working at a high level of quality, I can completely forgo those processes and AI has done all of that work for me automatically. Now below that, you can see here are the things we use to do that. I'm going to walk through those a little bit more in the coming slides. Before I walk through that, I just want to make sure if you're brand new to Copilot Studio, I noticed it was less than 10% of people here today said they're creating things in Copilot Studio. So I want to walk you through, well, how do you get into Copilot Studio? The very first thing is you need to have a license. We'll come back to that later. Then you go to that URL that you see right there on the screen, copilotstudio.microsoft.com. Now I'm going to go ahead and move over to that. And let's see, I think I've got that open here. So here I am. I've just gotten into Copilot Studio. So if I want to create a new agent in Copilot Studio, it's as easy as clicking the Create button right here. And one of the nice things you see when I first click that Create button is Microsoft has created a ton of templates here. So if you're kind of feeling your way around and aren't even sure what your vision is for creating an agent yet, or you just want to learn how to build one, there's 12 plus examples right there. You can just click those, it deploys a template for you, and you can get going with it right away. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to create a new agent. So when I create a new agent, it basically gives me this Copilot experience for creating the agent if I want to. So this is very meta. Basically, it's saying you can use Copilot, you can use generative AI to describe your agent, and Copilot will create your agent for you. So I can fill in messages, answer some prompts, and when I'm done, it creates it for me. Now, I'm not going to do that right now because I want to show you the next step in the process before we move on, and that's this. If I go straight to the creation experience myself without using Copilot to help, I get a very simple form to start with. If I fill out this form and click Create, I've created a complete agent. So what's on this form? A name, you can name it anything you want to name it. A description, this is a human description for you. So if you or anyone else ever wants to come back and go, let me remember what this is for, this is a human readable description. Here's the important part, instructions. These are telling your agent what to do. Think of this as a prompt. So you can say, this agent cleans out spam in incoming leads. It checks the description field to see if it looks like it's spam, and if it is, it disqualifies it. That tells the agent what it's expected to do. Now, there's a little more work in this particular case to set it up completely, but you can set some others up, like this agent takes a prompt from a user, and using that prompt, it asks a few more questions and builds a case study from it, or something like that. So you can have a completely self-contained agent. Starter prompts. So if you use Copilot at all, you know when you look at the screen, you see some suggested prompts there. You can create your own suggested starter prompts for your users. So just click the prompt, it fills it in for you. Maybe it has a blank where they add the last little bit of information, but it helps your user get started with a prompt. And then lastly, it has this idea of knowledge. Knowledge is just what is the knowledge that this Copilot's going to be trained in. Notice that when I first create it, it's basically web-based or document-based knowledge. It can be a public website like Microsoft.com, or it can be behind your firewall, something that lives in SharePoint. But once I create it, these other dimmed options and more also become available, and I have many other knowledge sources I can tap into to train my Copilot. So that's the creation experience. Once I'm done with all that, I could literally hit create and create my Copilot. If you were with us for part 1 last week, you saw Jordan go through that very process to create a knowledge agent. We're not going to do that this week because we're diving a little bit deeper. But what we're going to dive into is this. I'm going to pop back over here again to walk you through what's on the slide. I put the slide there so you can have that as a resource if you want it later. So this is an agent that has been created, and this is actually one of the templates available to you from Microsoft. I'm going to focus on really 3 or 4 things as we go through this today, but I want to point out to you where they are in the interface. The first one is we're going to talk about actions. We're going to talk about triggers. So a trigger is what starts this Copilot. Now, if you've never built one of these before, you probably think, well, the way I always start working with Copilot is I give it a prompt. But when you're creating a custom agent, the agent can decide to start on its own, like when someone updates a record, when a lead gets created, for example. Next, there's knowledge. Now, we're not going to talk much about knowledge today because Jordan did a fantastic job talking about knowledge last week. So if you want to dive deeper into that, go look at part 1. It's on the YouTube recording. But we're going to jump into actions. So actions are something that your agent can do for you. Think anything I can do or a user can do with their computer, my agent can do for me. And here's where I tell them what those actions are. I want to update a record. I want to put a approval message out there. I want to send an email alert to somebody. Anything that you can do as a user at your computer, conceptually, you can actually have AI, your Copilot, do that for you. Then we're going to close out talking about topics, and specifically within topics, we're going to talk about adaptive cards. So topics are just much more structured ways that you can guide a conversation. So if you say, hey, look, instead of generative AI, where the bot, if you will, makes all the decisions about how it interacts with my user, I'm going to have these more structured conversations where I'm going to go through a series of prompts and responses to make something happen. But topics can also include something in it called adaptive cards. Think of adaptive cards as little teeny forms that get embedded into the conversation where you can present information to the user or ask the user for information. We'll come back to each of these in a little bit more detail, but I wanted to give you that quick guided tour. So as I get into those things, you'll have a little bit of a frame of reference for how all those work. So the first thing is triggers. There are a lot of ways you can trigger an agent in Copilot to start. Again, the way you think of triggers in the normal, if you can call it that already, generative AI world is a prompt. I ask a question, I submit a prompt, it responds back to me. But look at all the different triggers that are available to you in Copilot Studio now. So I can say this runs automatically weekly. It's a recurrence. I can say if a new record gets created in SharePoint or on a Microsoft list or in Dynamics 365 or a channel message is added. So lots of different things that might happen in your Microsoft environment or just based on a timer can actually trigger your agent to start. So if you think, hey, I always start this task because someone created an opportunity and I need to go do some research on that opportunity that exists in the Dataverse, I can trigger that. Or you might say, well, gosh, there's an EDI record error that might trigger this in Business Central. Okay, then you might have a trigger that triggers that kind of starting behavior as well. So trigger is just a way you start this. Now notice we've got some of these demo videos that we're not going to look at today. Ask for the slides, we'll get all those to you. But in the interest of time, I just want to describe that one to you. But here is where some of the real secret sauce is, and that's this idea of actions. So actions are, if you remember, Traci said an agent has agency. Actions are one of those places where you give it agency. It's things your agent can do for you. Again, I can go get data for you and bring it back and do something with it, right? Data that exists maybe in SharePoint or maybe in the Dataverse or maybe in FNO. I can update records for you. I can go make updates to that data. I can update, Excel rows. I can send emails. I can put notifications out in Teams. I can do things for you. And here's where you train it. Here's where you tell it what those actions are. Now, quick description for this. There's a lot of ways to create agents. There's pro code ways. In other words, you're a coder, roll up your sleeves. You're going to be writing code. You're going to be doing some real work to do a lot of really detailed things. But there's also low code, which is where most of us will be working. Low code just uses Power Automate. So if you've ever used Power Automate before, this will be a very familiar experience. Notice in that Power Automate, I always have an opening piece that says this Power Automate flow was run from Copilot. Copilot called me and is going to do something. Then I can insert whatever I want to after that, and it always ends with, and now I'm going to go back to Copilot. Let's take a quick look at putting one of those together just so you know how that works. Let's get a quick overview of how a Power Automate flow action is added to Copilot Studio. From the Action tab in Copilot Studio, we click Add an Action. We can select from among existing and template actions, or we can create a new action. Let's do that. Next, we choose to create a new Power Automate flow. Copilot Studio automatically creates a simple flow for us with 2 steps. The first step is the trigger, and the trigger is always that this is called from Copilot Studio. You can add inputs to this step. This is how you pass information from Copilot Studio to the flow. The last step is the one that returns control to Copilot Studio, and you can add outputs to this step to pass information back to Copilot Studio. Between the 2 steps, you can add as many other steps as you like. In this case, we're just going to save and publish our work. Back in Copilot Studio, we can find the action we just created and add it. And after a moment, we can open it up and note that there is an Inputs tab, and the inputs I declared in Power Automate Flow are visible here. And there's an Outputs tab, and the outputs from Power Automate Flow are here. And in both cases, we have the ability to give your Copilot Studio agent instructions on what to do with that information. All right, so I realized that was kind of fast, and that was just a very simple example. The idea was, hey, I send a first name and a last name to Power Automate, it's going to return a full name to me. Don't really need Power Automate for that, but it was just to give you a simple example of how to create an action. What I did create actions for in this scenario was an action for creating an approval. So I basically said, hey, if the lead is spam, create this approval message and send it to the user in Teams. And you saw that pop up directly in Teams when I did it. I created another one that said, oh, I need to update a value in the Dataverse. When the user says, yes, that's the website, go ahead and update it. I need to write that value back into the Dataverse. Now, what you might have missed there is I can have inputs and outputs, and I'm moving back and forth between Copilot Studio and Power Automate. So, for example, when I want to update that Dataverse value, what I say is an input is all the information about the data that I want to update. So here's a new URL, and here's the ID of the lead I want to update. I pass that in, and then in Power Automate, I go look up that lead record, find that record and drop that value in there, save it, and return back to Copilot Studio. And I can also pass values back to it. So for example, on the Copilot Studio approval action, I can pass back to Copilot Studio, was this approved or was this declined? And then I can take action accordingly. So lots of communication going back and forth between those 2 things to make those things happen. Again, if you're familiar with Power Automate at all, you're going to feel really, really comfortable working within this type of focus. If you're not there yet, but you want to get started with Copilot Studio right away, not to worry. Watch last week's video because Jordan showed you how to build knowledge agents without even having to use custom agents at all. So wherever you are in your journey, there's an easy place for you to get started and move forward with it. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is topics, and really, I'm not going to talk too much about topics. I want to talk more about adaptive cards. So you might have heard Satya talking about Copilot is the UI for AI, right? So Copilot is Microsoft's way of saying, this is a new user interface. This is the front end for all of these AI capabilities we have. But one of the key things about that is AI is going to start to change, I believe, how we experience user interfaces across all of the applications we use all the time, not just with prompts and natural spoken language and listening, although those are all incredibly powerful and exciting things too, but grabbing just the right pieces of those forms to show us, here is this one thing that's important for you to see right now. Here is this one bit of information I want you to give me some input on right now. Now, if you remember in the little video I started with, I had this little very, very simple adaptive card that I created that said, okay, here's what I think the website is based on the email address, and I could actually change the value in that adaptive card and click submit, and it would go. That was presented in the Maker user interface. It would look a little nicer when it presents itself in something like Microsoft Teams. I want to show you a much more functional adaptive card because I think it's important for you to understand the flexibility and dynamic power that's available in these cards as you build out these experiences for your users. Let's take a look.
Through. Copilot will take just a minute to analyze all the necessary data, give you the information you are asking for, and provide it to the user in a way that is quickly digestible while being editable and continuously interacting with your other business technologies.
Okay, that was, of course, super quick video. Thanks to my coworker, Jordan, who's along with us for the Q&A session today as well. But that gives you some sense of I could serve up data in a super user-friendly format, not just written text. I could also give my user the ability to make updates to that data. Now, adaptive cards, if you start getting into them and going, boy, these are a little intimidating to design because you're going to use some programming code like JSON to do that. Well, guess what? You can actually go to Copilot, just go to Copilot inside of Edge or inside of Teams and say, I need to do an adaptive card that does this. And you can build all the language for it and then copy and paste that directly into where you're building that inside of the topic. That's exactly how I created a little adaptive card that you see here. So when you get deeper and deeper into programming, one of the things you'll find is, I believe, almost all of us are going to be coders in the future. Not that we're going to be writing code, but we're going to be using things like Copilot to do a lot of the coding for us behind the scenes. So remember at the beginning of this, I showed you here's a box where you can give your Copilot instructions. These are the instructions I ultimately gave the Copilot that I demoed for you at the beginning of my segment today. So you can kind of see like very plain English, right? Instead of having to write code or even do a Power Automate flow diagram, I just wrote these instructions in natural language, as you can see here. Now, I didn't do it all at once. I did one little thing. I can identify spam first. Then I added, what do I do? What do I do, right? So I gradually built out my language to develop this. And by the way, this is one area. This is the primary area, the instructions area on the front page of Copilot Studio. But throughout Copilot Studio, there are actually lots of places where you can give it instructions, where you can give it more information about, oh, you got this piece of information from that action I created in Power Automate. Here's what I want you to do with that information, right? Here's how I want you to format it. Here's how I want you to work with it. So you have lots of different places where you can manipulate all of that. So what I would tell you is, first of all, this makes it pretty non-intimidating. You still need to be someone who can kind of think through things as a process in a logical way. But the future of programming languages and the most popular, powerful programming languages in the world, they're no longer going to be Python, JavaScript, or C#. They're going to be native language. They're going to be your native language, which you're going to be able to create code in to tell your applications what to do and how to behave to get things done for you. So bringing this home with a few other things, I wanted to put something together that would help you understand some of the basics so you can go beyond just knowledge and you can start doing a little bit to create actions and triggers and stuff like that. But there is a lot more we could do with our lead processing agent. We brainstormed a few things together. You can probably add some of your own things to this list. Think through all the things. If you work with your sales team or you're in a sales team, think of all the things a lead processing agent can do to save your people time. Now take that and extrapolate that across all the other scenarios where Copilot Studio could work for you. What about processing purchase orders? What about handling errors that humans are having to go out and research on their own? I mentioned EDI errors earlier. We're doing that very thing for one of our clients right now. What about consuming product spec sheets and putting those in a standard format such as Excel, where you can then create that as a knowledge repository to answer questions for your people? The list goes on and on and on. But here's some, if you're interested in the lead processing agent, that we're actually building into this deliverable that we're rolling out for some of our clients as well. And the last thing is, I know this has been a lot, right? This is if you're just stepping into studio and you're like, wow, he bounced around. I saw a lot of things there. Hopefully it's enough to push you in the right direction. Here's a quick summary guide of some of the things I talked about too. So we talked a lot about knowledge, topics, and actions. And yes, we talked about triggers and adaptive cards too. I think that those are pretty easy to understand standalone. These three, you might feel like there's an overlap with. So I put this data card together for you to help you understand what are each of these things and when might I use each of these things to train my agent. And by the way, I put this together with Copilot Studio. I basically told it to give me the definitions of these things in different columns with different examples, put it together. I was able to drop it right into the PowerPoint for you. Just another example of the power of Copilot.
Awesome. Thanks, Geoff. I'm going to preemptively ask a question because it's going to come up. And I know you had talked a little bit about licensing early on, but real quick, can you tell me what is the basic licensing you need to create what you just had shown?
Great question. Yep, and we hear that a lot. So first of all, the only license you need to create Copilots is a Copilot Studio license. So you do not need to go get the Microsoft 365 Copilot license, though you might want that because there's a lot of other value for it. You can start creating Copilots and deploy them to your team without them having to have a paid license for Copilot for each user. Now your makers need to have a Copilot Studio license. So a maker is a person going into the maker experience and building those out. I believe that license is about $200 per user per month or per license user per month. And that actually includes some tokens, some credits behind the scene. What that means is that allows you to run that Copilot a certain amount of time across any users, and there's credits built into that. But if you exceed that, then you need to think about, I need to buy some capacity, right? You can either pay as you go, and as your people use it, you can look at the invoice every month that you get from Microsoft, or you can predict and project it and say, let me buy enough credits so I can control my spend and know how that will work over time. And I would also throw that open to Kody, Jordan. If anyone else wants to add anything else to that, feel free to. But that's kind of the starter point for creating Copilots as I understand it.
I can share a visual as well. I think I brought it up on the last one as well, where it gives the table and then the nice little dots and stuff. I don't have it up right now, but I can bring that up if there's more questions at the end.
Fantastic. Cool. Thank you, Kody. Okay, well then let's pass it over to Kody. And I'm very interested to see the next level and see what we do with the future of Copilot agents.
Struggling to leverage Microsoft Enterprise solutions? At C5 Insight, we understand the intersection between technology, business, and people. Contact us to learn more.
Welcome all. So one thing that I want to start off with is I'd say, a quote. I like my quotes. So Archimedes back in the day, he said, give me a lever long enough and a place to stand and I can move the world. And these AI intelligences are getting to the point where they have that same capability. And all that's really missing are the tools. And that's where agents are really coming in. And I've been saying, I've been in this since the beginning of LLMs. And, we've been in the Model T stage for a while. I think with multi-agents, which this really represents, this is starting to be the space age. So we're starting to get to the point where we can do really cool stuff. So, for example, I'm just going to say, what's up? Let's wake the agent up. And you can see right away, and this might look like, oh, it's just pulling this data from like O365. This thing is not connected to O365. The only way it knows it's working with me is because it's worked with me in the past. It's made an inference that since I am the only one working with it, that is where it got its memory and its judgment that, hey, I'm working with Kody. And you can see it gives a nice sup with you. So we have our own, this thing is smart enough with memory, which I'll show you in a second, to have your own lingo, to have your own companionship with this thing. It can remember your preferences. So I can say, what do you remember? And this will basically show, just like you are onboarding a coworker, sitting next to you at the desk, you build a relationship over time. Right? And this thing wraps like water around your workflow, uniquely yours, not just the business, not just your managers, yours. this shows basically all the things that it's educated itself about me, working with me. So you can see details of like, hey, here's my email address. And not only that, with different tools that it has, it's the default email address unless I specify otherwise. So that is a really powerful statement to say, basically, I can say send an email, which I'll show you. Send an email with this information. And you notice I didn't even put what email to send it to. It is smart enough to know, okay, yeah, yes, just send to me. Okay. Sometimes it asks clarifying questions, but so it's, I didn't even mention, but it's still brought up, I'll use your email, and then it asked me some follow-up, but it's just sometimes when I'm testing this thing, it gets a little questiony because it's trying to do its best and it answers follow-ups. And that's exactly where the situation comes in, where you can teach it things. So I can even teach it. I can say, remember this as my preference when I send emails. Don't ask any follow-ups and just send. So over time, when I build trust, and while this is cooking, I'll show you. So this is a test email that I sent. It might take a little bit to get the other one. Oh, there it is right there. So basically I'm using for the Power Platform. So it's just like, okay, how did it send this email? And basically I taught it through an agent. I said, hey, if you hit this Power Automate endpoint, you have the capability to send agents through natural language. That's basically what I gave it. I had to hook up the Power Automate, but that's basically what Geoff was showing behind the scenes. It's a simple flow, and I can show you in a second, where it's a URL, and then it's basically sending to with one step for an Outlook email. And then this is the capability unlocked by this. And this is just one situation of where you're seeing this meshing. So what's really important right now is, these copilots are like goldfish, they're doing single tasks, or, they're very focused on specific tasks. Here's where you get a swarm of agents behind the scenes to do specific stuff that, combines these agents. And that's really the value unlock. I'd say right now we're at this iPhone moment to where we have all of the intelligence, we have all the infrastructure. But before the iPhone, you had internet, but no one used it on their phone because it wasn't a great experience. Kids were texting, but no, adult would text. When the iPhone came out, it changed everything. That made it universal for everyone, unlocking the value. And then the apps like Uber and stuff like that built around the iPhone to make it to where it's accessible by anyone. And now my mom is the one that texts more than anyone. So for, this example, so I'm going to say, what agent or what can you do? Right? So just through natural language, I'm going to say, hey, what are your capabilities? So right at the beginning of the conversation, you can ask it, and it might even be worth. So now it gives me a list of all its capabilities that it currently has. And this thing is learning over time. So you can see it can do emails. You can see it can do dynamics queries. So I can say, get my latest SPs. And so this is invoking those skills behind the scenes. So when I mentioned tools with Archimedes, these are the levers that it is using to move the world in these scenarios. Tried to fetch, try again. Sometimes it did the at today, so it's not perfect, but I can train it, and this is a good scenario, to where I can leave out the customer ID. So there's this back and forth, and I'll show you, even if it runs into issues, here's where you can fine tune it. So this is the thing that's really been missing of, it's doing at today again. I can see it. And then it looks like it's being filtered. So I don't know what's going on. Severity, jailbreak detected. It looks like it's, I can see it thinking behind the scenes. So it somehow was triggered by the content filter, which is awesome. So it's looking at its thought process. And if it does something out of the ordinary from in terms of like, even me trying to abuse it of jailbreaking it, in this way I'm innovating. So, call it a jailbreak or call it a feature or a bug. But I'm basically teaching it and adjusting along the way to get my opportunities. And you can see, for example, from my teaching, so all of this meshes together. I never set opportunity to it. Get my latest SPs. And it did that in terms of translating that. So you don't see the fetch right here, but at the end of the day, when I taught it, it brought up opportunities. So when I bring this up, it actually brings you to the record in Dynamics 365. And that's actually a preference that I taught it through natural language. I literally gave it a URL for Dynamics. It didn't do this before. And then I prompted it and said, give me a link whenever, I can say, why did you give me a link? So that should show, in terms of collaboration, to where you're adjusting and you're teaching this thing. It might not know it right away, but at the end of the day, I have this stored as your preference. Cool. I'm going to say, awesome. Remember this to your long-term memory. You are doing a good job. So it even likes compliments. So I think I mentioned on the last section, and I'll peel back the curtains to see where it's saving this memory and what it looks like. But this thing is, nice positive feedback. So now when I look back here, and I'm going to say, you are meeting Abels for the first time in this demo. Remember this to your long-term memory and say hi. All right. So now so basically what it's doing is the AI is looking at different tools that it has, and it's selecting, I have memory. So it saved that. So now when I go away, instead of having a goldfish memory, what do you remember about? It will always remember this until the end of time, unless you clear out the memories, right? So this accumulates over time, just like a relationship would with a coworker. So I keep coming back to that because I'll show you a video in a second. It starts to become that this is just like working with another human through text message. So in terms of the usability, this is where it's the iPhone moment in terms of you don't even need to know what's going on behind the scenes. All you have to do is expect it to be your coworker, right? With the capabilities that a normal coworker would have. They don't know everything. You can teach them and they will learn and adjust. And then eventually you guys will be thinking the same thoughts, just like my wife and I. We know what we're going to say before we say it. And this thing has that same capability. And this is where we're going in terms of memory. The Copilot Studio team is working on memory right now. Really big advocate for that because context is king for scenarios. So those are just some of the tools. And I mentioned, and Geoff brought this up as well, in terms of, English is the first coding language. So one of the things that I want it to learn that it currently doesn't know, I'm going to say, learn how to get the latest. First, I'm going to say, can you get hacker news? So this is just a news source that I like. So, and it should say, unless it's waking up in some way that I don't know, do not have the ability to fetch live data. So I'm just going to start fresh. I'm going to say, learn how to get the latest hacker news. So this thing will abstract away, and it has a swarm of agents, and it can learn new agents on the fly. So right now, it is writing code behind the scenes, and it's saying, you can see it performed learn new agent, right? So what that does is it basically gives it the capability to, sorry, just gotta refresh. I gotta let me kill the Azure function quick just to make sure that it refreshes. All right. Just a second here, restarting it. Got to wake this thing back up. It's starting. I can see it has trace logs behind the scenes, so I can actually see its internal thoughts, and I can show you that in a second too. But if you take a look here, so okay, it looks like it's starting up. It's thinking, okay, now we're back. So now I'm going to just clear and I'm going to say, get my latest hacker news. So before, it didn't know how to do this. You saw that? It's like, hey, I don't know how to do this. I told it to learn how to do this. And it will try its best to actually provide the code behind the scenes. So it wrote Python to actually go and interact with this API. So it's smart enough to put all of these different details together. So now it invoked the Hacker News agent. So basically, my mom could write this code, not write the code, but get the functionality of writing code as a developer would before through natural language working with this AI. And that's really powerful because that basically unlocks, from an app store point of view, this thing writes its own apps, from that metaphor. So think of the power of relationships, being able to educate it on the fly when things are not going well, which is a huge complaint right now. So it adapts. And then, basically, it has the same UI UX experience of working with a coworker. And even on top of that, so I'll show you links too. Like this is a live link. And I can show you the actual code as well that it wrote, just because that's pretty cool. So this is the code that it wrote. This is what it's thinking. A lot of blue, which is good. We don't want reds, but sometimes, it can adjust and adapt, and I think that's fine. So that is, the way to teach it. So think of this. This makes code go away, basically. From a functional point of view, we still get the benefit. But in the long run, picture you're describing your use case or you're hitting a roadblock and you're telling your assistant, go learn how to do this. Go learn how to do this, and it will give it a try. And then, if it actually cannot do it because for whatever reason an API is needed or something like that, it can even tell you what your IT department needs to do to make this happen. So for Hacker News, this one is pretty straightforward because, it doesn't need an API key and authentication. But, if you were to use your own news source or, an application that has an API within your organization, picture a connector, which I hooked up to Copilot Studio, and I'll show you all of this through Copilot Studio as well. Bringing in that information, and then your assistant can light up a use case that was not there before the day before. Now you have it on the fly through describing your use case and then IT really blessing it instead of building it, and then unleashing that with your whole organization having that workflow if possible, or you could have it only yours if it's specific to you. So you're starting to see how this can fit like a glove in terms of details. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you. Can you give me a sales briefing? So this starting to, it understands me. It has access to my CRM. It has access to whatever, I have Hacker News, I have my news, I have everything. So this is where the UIs are starting to go away. I don't even have to go into my CRM. I can just interact with this through text, and then I'll show you in the video through natural language as well. So I'm going to say, okay, here's my sales briefing for today. Looks pretty good. So I'm going to say, create a PowerPoint with this information. So this was another skill. I think I taught it sitting in a rocking chair. So, it did quite a bit. And then I basically used Copilot to fill in the gaps of creating a PowerPoint. And then even I told it the capability of, hey, I want you to expose a link to me so I can quickly open it. So you can see that through natural language, with a little developer behind the scenes, making sure that it's blessed, that it's working correctly, all that fun stuff that enterprise still needs. But you can see that it is able to create a PowerPoint right from that for the briefing, right? So picture you're working with your agent and you need a PowerPoint very quickly. This thing just created that on the fly. You could say, create a PowerPoint, give me my briefing, create a PowerPoint, send it through email, whatever the use case is, and this thing can adjust on the fly and do that. So that should really show you the power of this. And, it's not even the UI. So getting into, the other use case. So it's like, okay, Kody, where does this come in for Copilot Studio? Well, Copilot Studio is the front end of this. So all of the channels that exist with Copilot Studio, it is unlocked here. So this is the exact agent. I'm going to say sup again. So this thing can follow you around universally. So in terms of, working in teams, working in, even in like a chatbot experience. So, I'm interacting with this and this thing is just like a person having a relationship. I'm going to say, what do you remember, just to show you. So this thing can basically follow you around. If you're on your phone, if you're in Teams, if you're on a website, if you're in a custom UI, this thing is there for you. And that's very different from how we interact with Copilot today. And this is the future UI UX that Satya was mentioning, to really show the UI to you in a very friendly way. But this thing is a beast behind the scenes in terms of intelligence. This thing is way smarter than me at this point. It gave itself its own nickname. And it's going to continue to learn, and it's already bringing up Geoff. I need to cancel my car wash subscription. I forgot about that. So you can see the details and see really where the future's going with this in terms of what we're looking at for AI. And last but not least, so let's see if you can let me stop screen sharing for a second, and then let me share with sound. All right, sorry for the whiplash. All right, so then this is basically me in Costco yesterday, and I was doing it throughout, but I was in Costco and having this conversation with this assistant. And if you guys can give a thumbs up if you can hear, just.
Hey Kody. Waving hand, how can I help you today? If you have any sales tasks, CRM questions, or just want to brainstorm, I'm ready to jump in.
So then it's getting the permissions from the phone.
Get my latest opportunities from Dynamics. Please send.
Here are your latest Dynamics 365 opportunities, SPs, with future estimated close dates. Would you like details on any of these, or want to take action, update, add notes, etc., on a specific opportunity?
Create a task for follow-up on the first one, please. Send.
A follow-up task has been created for your opportunity. Very likely will order 18 product SKU JJ202 this year. Sample. You're all set to stay on top of this key deal. If you'd like to add a note, set a due date, or need help with another opportunity's follow-up, just let me know.
Prepare me for the sales briefing. Please send.
So this is that scenario that I was bringing up of being on your phone, needing your briefing.
Here's your sales briefing for today, Kody. You have 2 key hospital meetings, one with Northeast Medical Center about an MRI upgrade, and another with Pacific Healthcare Group focusing on imaging standardization. Your top action: follow up with integration specs for the $2.5 million MRI proposal. Let me know if you need contact details, want talking points, or need to review meeting materials.
Get my latest hacker news. Please send.
So then, looking at my news, so picture a news source that you follow that's specific to you. I'm a nerd, so Hacker News is where I go.
Here are your latest top stories from Hacker News. Would you like a deeper dive into any of these, or to fetch more from Hacker News?
Send an email to my team with follow-up for this opportunity and all this other stuff. Please send.
Being very vague, all this other stuff, send it.
Your team has just received an email with the follow-up for your top opportunity, the latest sales briefing highlights, and a summary of today's top Hacker News stories. Everything is in their inbox so everyone stays in the loop. If you need a copy of that message, want to add more details, or send another update, just let me know.
All right. And there it is. So I'll leave you with that. So that is really the future of work, how we're going to be working for the next 100 years. When we're flying around like the Jetsons, we will be interacting with AI in this way going forward. So hopefully that showed you something and didn't scare you away too much. Glad that you're here to see it, because we're at an exciting phase right now.
I love it. I appreciate it, Kody, and I learn something new every single time. Okay, so I've got a couple more slides that I want to cover through really quickly, and then we'll get to some questions. So I'm just going to jump in really fast. And I want to talk about, transformation, because this is probably one of the most important slides we're going to show today. Copilot and AI is the latest in a stream of digital transformations, including CRM, modern work, citizen development, and business intelligence. If you're like most companies, you're going to follow a very standard practice across everything, which is creating a project plan. You're going to implement that plan and then include some training on it. And that's going to get you started. Unfortunately, that's the same process that about 70% of companies follow that end up with failed project. In a recent example that we have a company that wanted to implement Copilot. They started with licensing, they had a plan, they deployed it. They even had some very structured training, some high quality content. After 6 months, they saw a 20% adoption. Saw less than 20% adoption of that solution that they knew could be a game changer. Unfortunately, and just like human being, success is what you see, and what you only see is the tip of the iceberg. So it's so important to look at what you can't see. And what we found in so many years is you really need the hidden pieces, the roadmap, which is so much more than a project plan. It is that detailed vision from leadership with an initial project plan phase. And then what is extremely important is that center of excellence. It's so much more than support and training. It ensures a successful change management through continuous monitoring, improvement, engagement, support, and training, along with your projects that are nurtured so you don't end up with an unmaintained, messy, and neglected project. These two services that we offer at C5, so please make sure to take a look at them, discuss them. I invite you to look internally to see how you can create and organize those. So we've got a couple of deliverables. Please reach out for those. If you have a couple of minutes, we want to stay up for some expert roundtable and a couple of questions. So here we have our leadership summit in Denver. So please take a look at this. This is for business leaders and digital transformation. We also have Dynamic Community Summit in Orlando. We've got some great information here, some codes and some discounting for each of these. So let's jump into some questions really, really quickly. Now that we're very up on time. We do have a couple of questions. One question I'm going to ask for Geoff is, how did you set up the memory in Copilot Studio? What articles can we read to create your own version?
So,
was that for Kody?
So memory.
Oh, that was for Kody.
Yeah. So for memory, what I did was that's where Azure AI Foundry came in. So that's where I'm using the full stack of Microsoft. So basically, what's driving that prototype is OpenAI, Azure OpenAI. 4.1 behind the scenes. So basically, I gave it a description of, hey, here's how I want you to save your memory, and then here's how I want you to, when you wake up, how to remember it. And it wrote the agents, and then ta-da, it had it with that structure. So there's some Python living in an Azure function. It's not anything crazy. I think it's like 500 lines of code. It's wrapping the API, and then it basically, with that learn new agent capability, it can learn anything, and that's how I taught it how to do memory. So, through natural language and then some tweaks along the way, that's how I got it. And that's going to be really the workflow going forward.
Perfect. Okay, we are up on time, so I apologize. We've had some great questions. We will follow up with the responses to those questions, but thank you everyone for joining us today. Request the slides. You can do it by going to c5in.co/slides, or you can go to our website and request them. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and I look forward to you next time.